Good evening, members, and welcome to this meeting of the 20th of October at 7 o'clock. It's a Cabinet meeting. Fire alarm procedures. If the fire alarm is activated, vacate the offices via the stairs. Please do not use the lifts. Assemble in Hawley Square on the green. Officers will assist you and advise when it is deemed safe to return to the chamber. Number C, restriction on use of mobile phones. Please switch off or turn to silent your mobile phones and do not make or receive calls whilst this meeting is in progress. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed for members of the public. The meeting will also be recorded and will be subsequently broadcast on the internet. Does anyone intend to film the meeting? No, I couldn't see any hands. We'll then skip. The following members have asked to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1. For item 4, I have Councillor Whitehead. Item 5, Councillor Orban. Item 6, Councillor Whitehead. And item 7, Councillor Whitehead. Are there any more members who request to speak? No? Okay. Agenda item 1. Are there any apologies for absence? Apart from the leader, but thank you, Charles. Yes, Councillor Ashby has sent her apologies for the meeting. Item number 2, declarations of interest. Does anyone have an interest to declare in the items of business on the agenda this evening? No? Brilliant. Agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting to approve the summary of recommendations and decisions of the Cabinet meeting held on the 22nd of September 2022. A copy is attached to the agenda pack. I propose that we approve the minutes. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bob Bayford. Do members agree? Brilliant. Agenda item 4, Westgate-on-Sea Neighbourhood Plan, Regulation 16 consultation, the formal response from Thanet District Council. As Councillor Ashby is unable to be here, I will introduce this instead. A draft neighbourhood plan is being prepared for Westgate by the Neighbourhood Plan Group and Town Council. As part of its statutory role in this process, this council is currently running a public consultation, known as Regulation 16, on the Westgate Neighbourhood Plan, which finishes next Tuesday, the 27th of October. This is the last chance for comments to be made on the draft plan before it is examined by the independent examiner. A significant level of work has gone into preparing the draft neighbourhood plan over a number of years, and it is generally to be supported. However, there are some areas of concern, and these are set out in Section 2 and Annex 1 of the report. The main policy issues of concern relate to some of the proposed local green spaces and countryside triangle. Once all the comments have been received, an examination into the draft plan will be undertaken by an independent examiner. The examiner will consider all the comments made in relation to the draft neighbourhood plan and make recommendations as to any changes they consider are needed to meet government guidance. Officers are in the process of appointing an examiner, which is done in conjunction with the Town Council, and therefore I move the recommendation. To speak under 20.1, I believe we have Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to fully support the inclusion of the biodiversity net gain requirement, but would also like to ask for further specifics relating to the functional green corridor. I appreciate fully that we are limited by the requirements of the inspectors. However, green space being crucial to the long-term sustainability of biodiversity, I was wondering if it would be possible to discuss further if we believe there is anything that we can realistically do to provide for this space while still addressing inspectors' concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. As I'm just standing in for Councillor Ashby, I'm sure you could appreciate that I don't have an answer to that, but I will refer to our Officer Adrian, who may be able to offer assistance.
There was a very specific proposal that we had originally put in the local plan for a corridor between the existing housing and the new housing. The inspector took the view that was a matter for the detailed design. So the strategic policy in the local plan requires a certain amount of open space. I think it's about 11 hectares, but it's the disposition of that space within the site that's a matter for the planning application. So there will be open space, quite a lot of open space, but not necessarily in that specific location.
Thank you.
Therefore, I move this motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor George Cupp. Do members agree? Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 5, Environmental Protection Enforcement Policy. To introduce, Councillor Jill Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. The existing enforcement policy used by the Environmental Protection Team has been updated to ensure compliance with current legislation and guidance. In particular, the updated policy reflects the use of Community Protection Warning, CPW, and Community Protection Notice, CPN. Antisocial behaviour powers, alongside existing statutory legislation used by environmental protection officers in relation to nuisance complaints. Thanet District Council has signed up to the Enforcement Concordat, confirming its commitment to the principles of good enforcement. This policy encompasses the principles of this concordant. The policy lays out how enforcement action is decided upon and provides both those raising environmental protection complaints or those causing them to understand what action is available to the local authority to resolve these issues. The policy lays out how we investigate complaints, including priority of cases. The general policy relates to all enforcement actions and describes the basic principles of enforcement. Guidance is provided on what is considered when making a decision on enforcement action. The policy then goes on to lay out the various types of enforcement action available to the local authority. The policy includes details on complaints and appeals available to those who are affected by enforcement decisions made by the local authority. Council priorities for growth, environment and communities have also been considered within the policy. The policy will be accessible on the Council's website. I would like to recommend that Cabinet approve the updated Environmental Protection Enforcement Policy, which is Annex 1. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. To speak under 20.1, I have Councillor Orban.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Fully support this policy. It's always good to review policy after so long and to ensure that your policy is updated with the proper legislation, etc., etc. Having read through it all, maybe I'm old-fashioned, I suppose, but just the phrase that I haven't seen in it, and I just think that maybe to ask to consider it being included, and that is when looking to take any action, enforcement action, to also consider whether that action is in the public interest. That's not in the report at all, and I would ask to ensure the safety of the policy and to give the officers the chance to see whether those decisions that they're taking, is it in the public interest to serve this, and not just to say they've done this wrong and serve it, but because there could be other complicated issues, because nothing's black and white in the enforcement game, as I know. So I would ask, Chair, that could be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Orban. Councillor Bayford, do you have anything to come back on?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm sure that is taken in consideration. Maybe I could just defer to confirm that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's part of the enforcement concordat, so we will explicitly put it in there as a line to make sure it's really obvious.
Thank you, Chair.
Brilliant, thank you. Therefore, Councillor Bayford has moved the recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bob Bayford. The recommendation is members are requested to approve Thanet District Council's Environmental Protection Enforcement Policy for 2022 to 2027. Do members agree? Agree. Brilliant, thank you. Agenda item 6, Tenant and Leaseholder Services Annual Report. To introduce, Councillor Jill Bayford.
Thank you again, Chair. To achieve regulatory compliance, a social landlord must provide timely and relevant information that enables tenants to scrutinise their landlord's performance. And such provision must include the publication of an annual report. To ensure compliance, the Tenant and Leaseholder Services provides quarterly performance reports that are scrutinised by involved tenants and leaseholders and are available to view on the Council's website. They have now written their first annual report for the year 2021-22, this being the first full financial year the service has been managed by the Council since its transition in October 2020, and it is ready for publication. The report gives details on the key performance indicators for the year, which is supported with case studies and engaging photos. If approved, the TLS will ensure the report is accessible by making available on the Council's website and throughout a web reader. The web page will include an equalities statement and invites interested parties to request a printed document or in another format, and hard copies will be to request a printed document in another format, and hard copies will be taken to community events for interested parties to take away. I move the recommendation to publish the annual report on the Council's website.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. To speak under 20.1, I have Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Bayford. Firstly, I would like to say that this is a well-presented, clear and coherent report, and I think it's especially positive having the full word statements from our Head of Housing, Portfolio Holder and the Chair of our Tenant and Leaseholder Group, as it makes the status of the in-house health service as a collaborative and inclusive effort very clear. The 93.3% satisfaction rating for MERS is positive, as is the improving relationship. What is also positive is that we are exceeding our target for voids with minor works, but there is a significant disparity in the opposite direction for voids requiring major works, with a target of 22.5 days but an actual let time of 65.43 days. I just wanted to ask if this is due to particularly complex voids or whether there are other factors influencing the disparity that we can look to work on, as turnover is especially important at this time. The compliance figures are hugely encouraging and exactly what I'd hoped for post-East Kent Housing, and I know the amount of work that it's taken to bring us to this point and would like to publicly recognise everyone who has worked so hard to bring this about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Councillor Bayford, do you have a response?
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead, for your support. But I think I'll perhaps ask Bob Porter if he could explain the reasons for the major works, please. Thank you.
Actually, Sally's going to answer that.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Hi, thank you for the question. Yes, Councillor Whitehead, you're absolutely correct. We have been getting a higher volume of complex voids which are requiring major works, some of the properties requiring full refurbishments. This is not just a phenomenon, I can't say the word, sorry, phenomenon that is being experienced by Thanet. Through our networking groups that we are members of, we found that other areas in the UK are also experiencing the same thing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bob Bayford, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just following that answer. I just wonder, presumably these are properties that have been really badly treated by tenants. Is there any way that these people can be identified earlier before the properties reach a terrible state where they do require such radical refurbishment?
Sally.
Thank you. Yes and no is the answer to that. In some cases, we find that the properties are in need of such refurbishment because they have been inhabited by a single family or a single tenant for many, many decades. And often those families perhaps don't want council intervention, and by the time we get the properties back, because they've not wanted us to refurbish their kitchen or their bathroom, and that obviously is their prerogative as long as there's not a health and safety issue. All of those items are required at that stage, and we do get quite a few properties back like that. You're absolutely correct, and we are trying to tackle residents that are mistreating their property before it gets to that stage. And by doing that, we are doing that by getting our housing officers to carry out tenancy audits now. So each year, 20% of our properties that we wouldn't usually get access to, people that don't access our service, we are looking to be able to go into their property and have a look around and see if there are any repair or tenancy requirements.
Thank you. So Councillor Jill Bayford has moved the recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Councillor David Saunders. The recommendations is that Cabinet is asked to authorise the following: to publish the Tenant and Leaseholder Services annual report to the Council's website. Do members agree? Agenda item 7, Tenant and Leaseholder Services procurement, kitchen, bathroom and lifts refurbishment. To introduce, Councillor Jill Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. The first item in this report asks Cabinet to agree to the letting of a contract to refurbish the lifts in Invicta House in Margate. The value of this contract will be about £315,000 and will be to refurbish the 2 passenger lifts that service the residents in Invicta House. Invicta House is a 15-storey high-rise. Recently, both lifts have been plagued with breakdowns. This causes much inconvenience to the residents, especially for those who cannot leave their floor without an operational lift due to disabilities. High frequency of breakdowns also increases the risk of an entrapment, which can be a scary experience for the person that becomes trapped in a broken down lift. The lifts currently need £70,000 worth of replacement components, but as they are coming to the end of their life cycle, the TLS feels it would make more economical sense to carry out a full refurbishment. The second item in this report asks Cabinet to agree to the letting of a new contract that will continue the Council's kitchen and bathroom refurbishment programme. Sadly, the contractor that was carrying out this programme went into administration early this year, and this has meant that the TLS need to procure a new contract ahead of the specified time. The TLS proposes to let the contract for 5 years with an option to extend for a further 24 months. The total value for this contract is £3,375,000. I move the recommendations set out in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. To speak under 20.1, I have Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you again, Chair. I'm fully in support of the suggested option of a full lift refurbishment at Invicta House rather than simply repairs, as it is not only the right choice for residents, but also the right choice economically, considering the number of repairs required and the age of the lifts. In relation to both contracts, something that I asked to be looked at when I held the housing portfolio was addressing the way we look at contracts within housing in order to attempt to increase and build the local economy as part of the contracts we control. Currently, we use the most economically advantageous tender model, which at a basic level is the cheapest. There are immediate economic advantages to this, but considering the size of these contracts and the importance of building our local economy, I suggested that we look instead at increasing the weighting of other factors within our tendering process, such as inclusion of local jobs or apprenticeships, and elements that provide a community good as well as a local economic stimulus. Councillor Bayford and Mr Porter and I discussed that in relation to the contracts listed at our last briefing. I can see that they are still listed under most economically advantageous tender approach, but considering the importance of this and the positives for our local economy that looking at how we use and apply our tendering weighting could bring, can we commit to looking into this fully for our future contracts? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Councillor Jill Bayford.
Thank you to Councillor Whitehead for the question. Yes, as you say, we discussed this. My understanding is that we cannot specifically ask that local companies are involved, but that we can make recommendations such as the inclusion of apprenticeships and the likes, which I think would be very advantageous for local young people or local people altogether. Perhaps you'd like to enlarge on this.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. Well, obviously, the first issue here is that we need to comply fully with procurement legislation and ensure that our contracts are let in accordance with the Council's contract standing orders. But there is provision within that to consider social value in the evaluation of tenders at that stage in the process. We do look to do that wherever we possibly can. So obviously for larger term contracts, we can, as Councillor Baver said, look to include local apprenticeships. We can include local office provision if we want to, or we can encourage the use of local subcontractors as well within provisions. The exact split of the cost and quality evaluations in any tender doesn't have to be cost first. For example, and Sally's quickly writing down numbers for me, we could have a split that gives extra weighting to the quality of the submission over the price. So it isn't necessarily the cheapest, and actually often we wouldn't want the cheapest tender. We want the best tender in terms of service delivery and added value for the local community. So absolutely we can look to include local social value wherever that's possible.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Bayford has moved the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bob Bayford. Do members agree? Thank you very much. That concludes the business for tonight's meeting. I declare this meeting closed at 7:22 p.m. The live stream of this meeting will now end. Thank you.